Everyone. We are excited that y'all are joining us today for our Student Support Summit. And it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters today. We have Dr. Louise Bodack, Brad Jones, and Jason Shaw. And I am going to turn it over to them. Please remember we have the survey at the end of the presentation. If y'all would fill that out, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. So Dr. Bodack, please take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. So glad you're able to join us this morning. I hope you had the wonderful opportunity to hear our keynote speaker, Dr. Jason Fountain. He shared some gems and nuggets, and we're excited to welcome you to talk about growing where your roots aren't. So one of the things kind of in putting this together, and it's not sort of going to be a traditional presentation, it's kind of going to be a conversation, and we might be asking you to do some stuff. But we recognize that all of you are here probably for a different reason. Maybe you're at different points in your careers. Hopefully we'll be touching on some of maybe the questions that you might have or things that you're thinking about. And without further ado, I will go ahead and get us started here. So I'm Dr. Louise Bodack. I hail from Yonkers, New York. And that's where I grew up. That's where the majority of my family is located. And my journey in life has taken me to my undergraduate career at Rollins College, which is in Winter Park, Florida, which is just about Central Florida. It's an hour and a half, almost exactly to each coast. Received an AB in chemistry. From there, my journey took me back up north to Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. I was there for 7 years. I received an MPhil and a PhD in chemistry. I knew I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach at the collegiate level. And I took a short 3.5-hour journey over to Framingham, Massachusetts, which is on the eastern end of the central part of Massachusetts. And I spent 12 years there. I started as an assistant professor of chemistry, was promoted to an associate professor of chemistry. My last 4 years there, I was department chair of the Department of Chemistry and Food Science. And Framingham State has the distinction of being one of the only colleges or universities that houses food science under chemistry. So students are getting a chemistry background. And in July of 2013, I made the jump all the way down to Baton Rouge. Currently the director of student affairs in our office. And just kind of some fun photos I had here, and is that working with a number of students here, not a lot of them believed you would never see snow on a beach. So in Thanksgiving, and I forget what year this was, happened to be some snow. So I got a photo of snow on the beach. And there's standing next to a snowman that somebody built. Seaweed is the hair, and somebody found some sticks and put those in for the arms. But students still did not believe that that was actual snow. They said, I faked this photo. This was before AI generated photos. I promised them no, it was real. And then one of my responsibilities in my current role is to help organize the 3.0 recognition. It takes place in the fall semester. It honors our student athletes who received a 3.0 or higher for the spring semester. And we get to celebrate that on the field in Tiger Stadium. So there I am in Tiger Stadium on a nice sunny day, not too humid that day. And that's kind of been my journey and just kind of my background. If you're familiar with New England, can't really see it that well, but we got some lovely trees, and there's a winding road as you're on this journey. And that's kind of how I viewed my path in life. It's a journey. I'm not on a straight road. Sometimes there are curves sharper than others, but I'm enjoying my journey thus far, and I will let Brad talk about his journey.
Thanks, Dr. Bodack. From what y'all can see, the painted southern regions, y'all know that my title was Growing Where Y'all's Roots Ain't, but Dr. Bodack helped clean that up for me. For those of y'all, appreciate putting your states in the chat. I knew we'd have people from across the country. So good morning to a lot of y'all. Good afternoon to some of the East Coast, North Carolina people, and then a very good early morning So those on the West Coast. Also, I know it looks like I have something against the state of Alabama. I promise I don't. I was going to apologize if anyone's in there. You won't catch me say Roll Tide, but I have touched about every other state around it. So I was born and raised in Athens, Georgia. Grew up there as a diehard Georgia fan because my dad worked with the university. I was at every sporting event. But this was after they were good and before they were good. So it was tougher times to be in Athens, Georgia. Came down to LSU from 2002 to 2006, where I did my bachelor's degree. Met a girlfriend at the time, now wife, but she's from New Orleans. So she went up to Mississippi State University for undergrad. So I chased her up there. Oh, I do see a Roll Tide. I'm with that today. I chased her up to Starkville, Mississippi. I know some of y'all have been there. I did a master's in education where I started teaching high school, and I was working at a local community college as the math tutor, the only tutor. I showed up and there we go, and got to pretty much build out a math program for that community college as someone who probably didn't deserve or earn that responsibility, but I took it, loved every bit of it. I graduated with my master's. My wife graduated undergrad at the same time. She decided to go to the University of Florida for pharmacy school. So I chased her down there too. She's fast, but not fast enough to get away from me. Chased her down to Gainesville, Florida. We were there during the TiVo years, if y'all remember those. So there was a lot of winning going on in Gainesville. So it was tough not to be a Gator. But while I was there, I spent 4 years teaching high school again, and kind of stumbled my way into the University of Florida's athletic department, their academic center there. So I was teaching high school during the day, tutoring the student athletes in the evening, and did that until my wife graduated. If y'all know Louisiana girls, they New Orleans girls specifically, they rarely leave the city, but they never leave the state. So I knew that we were coming back to Louisiana. It was just a matter of time. So when she finished pharmacy school, we came back to Baton Rouge in 2012, where she started her residency hours. And then I enrolled back in school as a grad assistant with the academic center here. Finally married her. That was a great part of it. And I've been here at the academic center for student athletes since 2015 in a full-time role. I became our first math specialist, and now I'm the assistant director of our student support services, covering our tutorial center, reading and math programs, and a lot of the educational components. Jason?
Well, appreciate the baton toss, Brad and Dr. B. Again, thank you all for being a part of this today and taking time out. Pretty awesome to be able to connect with you all. Looking from me, I like to keep things in the middle. I like those buffers, away from the coast and whatnot. But originally a Midwest guy, family, basically in Missouri, St. Louis area. They're all still kind of up around there. That's their fort. They're not leaving. Went to University of Central Missouri, Go Fighting Mules in Jennings. Did my undergraduate there. Very similar to Brad, and even Dr. B was kind of dipping my toe in the education realm, whether that be teaching or maybe something more. Decided I was looking at graduate schools, not really on my radar as an undergrad, first gen student. So I had a really good advisor, kind of pointed me in the right direction, applying for some grad programs, grad assistantships. Ended up at Kansas State, had a really great opportunity to pursue a master's in higher ed administration with collegiate athletics concentration. They did a wonderful job of not only assimilating you in, so I was a grad assistant in athletics and event management, but they kind of encouraged us to bounce around, check out all the different areas within athletics, kind of maybe see what your interests were, and just really felt that pull back to academia, back to student services. So got in with them at the Student Athlete Center there at K-State. They embraced me, took me on, showed me the ropes, really enjoyed my experience there. And then applying for full-time jobs, was able to get the opportunity here at LSU in Louisiana. My grandmother was super excited. She loves Mardi Gras. She loved coming down here. She had like her group of people in Lafayette that she would come, and they would do Mardi Gras down here, and then they would come up and do Oktoberfest, in Missouri, where my grandma was living at the time. So she was all about it. She's like, yeah, go for it. But as a guy who had never really ventured out of the Midwest, had always been within 3 or 4 hours of home, it was definitely a different experience for me coming down here, but a great experience nonetheless. I was kind of the opposite of Brad, didn't have the fortune of chasing a good woman. I think luckily for me, a good woman hit me in the head while I was down here. And so similar to Brad, my wife is from Louisiana, had spent some time in Indiana. So she kind of understands my Midwest quirks. She kind of deals with them and tolerates them as best you could. But I've actually lived down here in Louisiana longer than I've lived anywhere else. So, I think they said when I first got here, within a month of moving here, had the first hurricane, Gustav came through. So everyone was like, oh, you're good. You're assimilated. You've had a hurricane. You're one of us now. So yeah, I guess I'm an assimilated Southerner at this point.
All right, y'all. So that's a little bit about us. Again, I appreciate y'all putting your states in the chat. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our map where we have our roots and color in some of y'all states as well. So y'all can see that right now, even though you might not feel like you're back home or feel like you've got some planted roots, looking at the map, you're gonna see you've got roots everywhere. The next activity, I'm gonna have you do, I need you to grab a sheet of paper like this. I'll give you some time. Grab whatever closest sheet of paper you've got, flip it over. If you have an agenda of something, flip it on the back, and then just trace your hand. Trace your hand just like you see on the sheet of paper, and that'll help us dive into our activity. I promise you, you will not have to share this. This is for you and you alone. I told Jason and Dr. Bodack, and I haven't told Sarah yet, but Sarah, you got to do it too. You got to find a sheet of paper. You got to trace your hand. I think Dr. Bodack went lefty on us on that one, but get a sheet of paper, trace your hand. And this is something that we want you to have after we're done. Maybe at 4:30 it finds its way into the trash, but if it lasts on your desk for the next 5 hours, that's more than enough. So in just a moment, if you've got your hand, we're going to ask y'all 5 questions, and each question is going to correspond to a different finger. And if you've got longer sentences to write, it might be tough to fit it in there, but you can shorthand it. Again, this isn't for a grade. You're not showing this to anybody. It's just for you. You know your handwriting, you know your notations. But try to keep your answers within each of the fingers.
All right.
Okay?
Here we go. You ready?
We'll go on.
All right. We're probably thinking, what in the world could they possibly be asking us on a Friday morning?
Okay, for your thumb, if you have a friend or a family member that would be arriving later today, they're coming to see you, where are 1 or 2 spots in town that you would be sure to take them? The friend or family member arriving later today, you're picking them up from the airport, they're getting dropped off at you, 1 or 2 spots that you're taking them today. Okay? Pointer finger. What are 1 or 2 qualities that make you great at your current job? What's something that makes you great at your current job? And be honest, again, this is just for you. Your eyes only. Burn after reading if you need to, but this is for you. Okay. 3rd question, middle finger. What is one activity or outing that somebody told you to try out when you first got to the job you're at? You first got to your current location that you haven't done yet. What's one thing you can think back? Even if you've been there for 10 years, there's probably something that is on your to-do list, but keeps on getting kicked down to the bottom.
I can see there's a lot of thinking going on here this morning.
I like that. I've seen a couple smiles. That's the best part. Couple smiles when we get a good answer. Okay. Ring finger. What is one thing about the place that you are in right now that you are grateful for? That could be physical place, the building, the city, the state. Emotional place. What's one thing about the place you are in right now that you are grateful for? And then the last one, our pinky finger. We got a little deep on this one. If future you walked into your office right this minute, so you're sitting here, all of a sudden there's a knock on your door, it's future you. What one question would you ask them?
I'd have to say, well, my future me would be just barging into my office. I don't think they'd be knocking.
That could be true for sure. So future you walks in, what one question are you asking them? So we've still got all the questions up there if you missed one or want to go back to a finger. But once you're done, just hang on to this. Keep this on your desk. What we have set up today, we have a few questions that we assumed someone joining this presentation might be wanting to ask. It could be questions you're thinking about moving places, you just moved places, you've never left home, you've been gone for 20 years, you want to get back home. Any of those type questions we've got set up to discuss. But we kind of chatted and we think the heart of this is going to come from questions that you all have. So our next slide is the second or third to last slide, and you'll be able to see all the questions that we're going to go through. But we really want this to be open. I think everyone can unmute themselves if they feel the need to or want to chime in. You can always put questions in the chat. You can always send direct messages to myself, Dr. Bodack, or Jason as well. But we really want y'all to drive a lot of the action here because we are set up to take as many detours, like Dr. Bodack said. We've got a winding road we can take today. Does not have to be the I-10 expressway getting us to the end. So hang on to your finger sheet and we'll jump into our first questions.
Okay, so you know, kind of thinking about things, one of the first questions that kind of we thought about is maybe what are the challenges of moving into an area in which one has no roots. So I will kind of go ahead and just talk a little bit about my journey here. When I moved here, I only knew one person in the state. That was my boss. I had met him when I was at Syracuse University. We stayed in touch over the years. I did work in that academic center at Syracuse with the student athletes, literally stumbled into it. He tried to convince me for 12 years that this is what I should be doing. And as he would say, I was hard-headed enough to finally listen to him, that it only took me 12 years to figure this out, that I was meant to be at LSU working with student athletes. But when I moved here, when I first got here, I wasn't even on the job a week when I ended up in the hospital with acute appendicitis. I was living in an extended stay America. My furniture was supposed to arrive 2 to 5 weeks after I arrived in the state. So my first couple of weeks first week or so was spent in the hospital. Thankfully I was still covered under insurance by my previous employer. but never envisioned that scenario. Now I'm dealing with a dad in New York who is frantic, a sister in Ohio who is frantic. I'm in the hospital. They had questions about, well, is the hospital you're in any good? What about the doctors? And I'm like, you know what? They ain't let me leave the hospital now. And when I came out of the hospital, within less than a week, I had 2 new staff members starting. So that was kind of a challenge that I faced, was sort of navigating that journey of being hospitalized, priding myself on my independence, really had to rely a lot on my staff. Sarah, who's on this call, was somebody that I relied a lot. She was awesome, just kind of helped me. What do you need from the store? What can I do for you? Also kind of being at work, you start out and you don't have any sick leave. And now I've been almost a week in the hospital. I can't work full 8-hour days. Had an amazing boss who was like, you know what, we're just kind of going to come up with our own plans to how we're going to manage this. Kept track of how many hours I was out, and I had until the end of the year to make that time up. My sister was able to get into town and provide updates to my dad. It was really just relying a lot on the staff that I was working with, some whom I had never met until I started. And I was, I think, 2.5 days in the office before I ended up getting sick and then going to the hospital. But I had no signs of, none of the traditional signs of appendicitis. So that I would say was my biggest challenge. I can let you know it is one way to definitely make an impression and make a lasting impression. But I would perhaps advise going such a drastic route as ending up in the hospital for that. So, Jason, maybe you want to share your challenge?
Yeah, but yeah, rough goings, Dr. B. The guy had said, like, we had a hurricane like after I'd moved down here, so that was different for me. Being a Midwest guy, I was used to tornadoes coming maybe in the next couple hours to like minutes, like take shelter, and then coming to Louisiana and they're like, there's a storm in the Gulf and it may be here in a week. So it's kind of, what should I do? Like, how did I navigate that? But kind of like Dr. B had said, I really leaned on our staff. I leaned on the people here. And I mean, that was talk about making some relationships out the gate. You know, they didn't really know me outside of my interview and didn't know them outside of my interview, but to have staff members that were, hey, come stay with us, you know, come hunker down with us. Like, here's what you should do. Here's how you prepare. Like, if you plan on evacuating. So that was like a challenge, but also a positive. It really helped me connect with staff outside of the professional realm, I think. And then kind of tagging on with Dr. B, I look at my experience. I've been at LSU for a little over 15 years now, and I'm sure a lot of you have moved around a lot in order to progress in your career or, you know, your education, whatnot. So I've been fortunate. I've been able to kind of grow in this place over time. But I think one thing that was easy, especially at the start of my career, you all are tired. You all work really hard in this industry. So maybe come Friday or come after work, your first lean to is not to go be social, to not maybe accept an invitation to go and do something. And that was something that it took me a little time to kind of, hey, I need to get out. I need to branch out. I need to start meeting some people and growing my connections outside of just the campus or professional realm. Another one, it's super easy to say, get involved, you know, who has the time. But I look at some of the relationships and some of the people I really lean to hard, and it really probably came about from a volunteer opportunity or sitting on a committee where I maybe not have interacted with them had I not. Also, too, like I look at Brad on this one, like, you know, find that person that you know that is aware of all the events going on. Sarah is great with this too on our staff, you know, some locals or some people that have good touch points to, hey, you should check this out, or you should get involved, or you should come and experience this. So putting things on a calendar, I think in Louisiana, we're super fortunate. There seems to be always something coming up, whether it's Mardi Gras or festival season or Jazz Fest or sports, you name it. So having those times where you can put intentional things on the calendar, things that you can look forward to. Because I know me, if it gets to be the day before, the day of, it's hard. It's hard to pivot and say, yeah, I'm going to go do that. But if you kind of have it on there and you're locked in, you got some people that are expecting you to be there and wanting you to be there, that's super helpful too. Just kind of like building that support, getting some roots down, I guess, where you are, and it may not be for a long period of time. I didn't expect to be down here as long as I have, but those are some things that I definitely have taken away and been fortunate. Now I have some people that I consider friends, but also like, second family, if not first family, away from home.
Okay, Brad, you want to kick us off on the second question?
Yeah. So, we talked about moving somewhere where you don't have roots. So then we started thinking about some challenges that, you might be in a space where things are kind of tying you down there, not in a bad way. You're where you're going to be. So for me, being married, focusing a career in Baton Rouge, I love it. I wanted to do it. I was an undergrad here, 02 to 06 at LSU. Baton Rouge, even though it wasn't home, kind of felt like my home away from home. So, when you're younger and you're bouncing around, like it's fun, you're carefree. Yeah, I'll unpack my apartment and load it up and move to the next place. But I can tell y'all, I moved 6 years ago. I don't want to move again. I'm tired of that, And so part of that, you get a little bit older, you get a little worn out. But then when that applies to your professional career, you can look through it with the negative lens of feeling stuck. But I don't think that does you any good. I think where you are trying to grow, wherever that might be, you are trying to plant some roots. You don't know if you're going to be there for 30, 40 years, long enough to grow into a giant oak tree. But at least plant some roots so you can grow. And so for me, I joke that New Orleans girls don't live in the city, they never leave the state. I'm not 100% on that, but it's pretty darn true. So I knew we'd be back in Louisiana. And when we moved back, I kind of left my family back at home. I left. My dad was in Athens, Georgia. My mom was in Amelia Island, Florida. My brother was both in Georgia and Florida. So I'm now 10 hours away, and I'm grateful for the in-laws and the extended family that I do have. But where I'm at now, I'm 40 years old. My two sons are 10 and 8, and all their grandparents are here. Grandma lives in town. Grandparents live in New Orleans as well. So they've become such a great part of our lives. If any of y'all have young kids and you're blessed to have grandparents nearby, you don't know how blessed you are. You may not know how blessed you are. It is an absolute great thing to have. The people who don't have that will remind you how blessed you are for sure. But it is tough, for me, as I'm trying to advance professionally. I'm looking at jobs, looking at D1 Ticker, all the sites. It's what would that cost be? Am I going to take my kids away from their grandparents? Am I going to go move to Alabama and check that off my state guide? Or do I move to Tennessee right above Alabama so it really shows that I'm staying out of the great state of Alabama? But all of that is taking, kids away from their grandparents, from family, from support. So sometimes it is hard. Sometimes, you want to reflect on the great things, the settled that you've gotten so far, and really start feeding that system to grow. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head, Brad. Similar to Brad, my wife's family is here. So that's been helpful for me, just with my own parents and my own sisters and nephews being up north, like having a connection down here has been phenomenal. But I think it's also taught me to be really intentional. So with my family, we coordinate FaceTime and Zooms, for all of us, like my sisters and I and my brother-in-laws, to all kind of like connect together. And by no means does it replace being together in person. But we just felt like it was important for our kids to like visually see, their relatives and their aunts and uncles and their cousins. And then again, I'd spoke about being intentional, putting things on the calendar. So my sisters and my parents have been really great about, hey, at least minimum twice a year, we all collectively put something on the calendar that we can all kind of plan and look forward to, and connect with one another in that sense. A big one too for me, especially with family and friends who aren't here, the commute call, like that was something one of my good buddies it's so easy, right? And you all are busy. Everybody has a lot going on, but I thought about how much time I just spent going to and from work or place to place, and utilizing that time, that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, could be more, to like just call people and connect with them. And it's such a simple thing, but I've like had such a great benefit from it. And I think it goes a long way. When you can kind of look back, at least for me, I look back on some of my friends that I've known, since high school or college, and that, we still feel connected and there's still that effort. That's a big thing we talk about. Like, hey, I appreciate that you put that effort in, or that you touch base. And so that's one thing I've like, it's so simple. But I think it's had such big gains, just for me personally in that regard. And Brad, from a professional standpoint, I could really relate to a lot of that. Sometimes you could look at something as a negative. I don't get to see my family as much, or maybe my career progression or my opportunities may be limited, but it also is like helped open my eyes to a whole lot of other opportunities and experiences that I don't think I would have given, the chance or given the time that they deserve if I had just kind of always had my blinders on, thinking I'm not going to be here much, longer, if longer, and why bother type of thing. I'm trying to look elsewhere. That was a whole lot of me talking. How about we jump over to the next one? We'll get Dr. B back in the game. Kind of transitioning, Dr. Bodack, being in academia, being a department chair, and then kind of transitioning down to Louisiana, and student athlete support services. Kind of how was that transition, but also like stepping in and supervising people, whether that be at a departmental level, or like a program level. So Dr. B, that one's for you.
All right. So I'd say when I came to LSU, I had already been a professional for 12 years. The last 4 years were spent managing a department. I had over 20 full-time and part-time staff that I was managing. I'd say one of the biggest sort of differences and maybe challenge in switching those roles is as being at the college level teaching chemistry. You pretty much know what your curriculum is. This material has to be covered in this semester. The order in which you do it, you might have some flexibility with how you present it. You have some flexibility with also in terms of hiring at the collegiate level for chemistry. We had was a PhD to be full-time. So we're dealing with individuals who had already had 4 years of undergrad, maybe anywhere from 5 to 7 years of grad school. And then if they chose to do a postdoc, that could then be anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So we were hiring people typically in their late 20s, early 30s. And then when I came to LSU and I was making hires, I was hiring people who were maybe in their early to mid 20s. One of the biggest challenges for some of those was maturity levels. I never expected that or anticipated that. So that was kind of a learning curve for me to manage those some of those issues with the individuals that I was supervising. On the other side, when I was still teaching chemistry and I became department chair, sort of one of the biggest challenges I had is I was now supervising people that I had been friends with. I was able to put on whether I was a department chair hat or their friend hat and kind of separate those interactions. Some of my friends were not able to do that, and they're like, well, you should be able to tell me this or share this information with me because you're my friend. And I said, yes, I'm your friend, but as department chair, I can't share that information with you. And that presented challenges. I'd say the other challenge of coming down here is, you know, every day was different. You'd maybe have a plan set up. This is what I hope to accomplish some days before I made it into the office. I knew that my plan for the day was quickly out the window and I needed to think fast and figure out what my day was going to look at and how to manage maybe the situation that had come up. But again, sort of, I think one of the things, the themes that Brad and Jason have mentioned is kind of like, you rely on your network, whether it's your office mates, teammates, and sometimes to help you navigate some of those challenges. So Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I think coming into the realm, everybody wants to do a good job in terms of being a supervisor. At least that would be my assumption. And it can be a unique challenge, you know, whether you're coming from one institution or place or position to another and trying to kind of get a gauge of your people, and how they work best and how they benefit from you and communicating and expectations. So I think that's kind of one that's universal for everybody. But in my instance, a lot of my growth has been at the same institution, the same department. So I think that brings another set of challenges of, all right, like maybe now some of your peers are now people that you're supervising or responsible for, or, you know, maybe like there's like people that you have leaned on really hard in your career, you know, as like a mentor or someone to kind of help show you the path and the ropes. And now kind of the roles are shifting a little bit. And now you're kind of stepping into that role, you know, similarly with them. And so that could be a little bit of a challenge. And I don't mean that in a negative way, just something different, something new. One thing that we've utilized here at LSU and just in our own department is the DISC assessment and kind of understanding how people interact with each other best. What are some people's preferences? You know, Brad, is he somebody that would be best if we just caught up in person? You know, we had 5 minutes face to face, kind of talk things out on the same page, you know, dap it up, cool, let's go. You know, whereas Dr. Bodack may be somebody who's, hey, like it would be best if you sent me some bullet points, sent me some of the marching orders, have some time to like review it, go over it, marinate it, and then go. So I think that's been something that's been really helpful for our staff. And each time we onboard somebody new, that's something that we have. And, you know, a lot of us outside of our door, it kind of shows our preference. It shows our style. So mentally, you kind of can gear yourself up a little bit for, hey, you know, how I might interact with one staff member, maybe a little different from another. But I think that's been super helpful, along with something else that I know Sarah is really influential with us, just from like an HR standpoint in our staff of, hey, like we're going to have our annual planning. We're going to map out kind of the expectations for our staff members, but also it's a reciprocal relationship. It's just as much as, you know, the supervisor and the supervisee saying, hey, these are things that I really feel would be important for my growth and my progress in the career. And let's be intentional, which is something I keep saying. Let's be intentional on how we map that out. So instead of just saying, hey, like these are things we're going to put in place for you to grow, no, let's actually say you're going to join this committee, or you're going to go attend this virtual conference, or I would like for you to maybe take on this program and take it to the next level. So I think those are some things that could be really helpful as you're getting to know your people, whether it's at a new place, a new institution, a new job, or if it's continuing at the same place, because they can all be different and it can all be a transitionary time for sure. You know what, I'll tackle the next one, maybe throw this one out to the crew. Pull up what's our next one. So Brad, you know, and I say this being that Brad, you know, Sarah that's here, you know, some of our other staff members, when I first got here, not a lot of our staff members were parents or had children or maybe weren't married. So I think having some people on staff that kind of set a good template has been super helpful for me. And, you know, not to pump him up too much, not to inflate his head, but Brad has been like great for me in that regard. So, you know, Brad, how is, you know, starting, juggling, raising a family, you know, with maybe one set of grandparents being local and then kind of your family maybe not being local?
Yeah, it's they get jealous. They get jealous for sure. I'll just go ahead and put that out there because if you don't know that, you will soon. But it's kind of like the other side of the coin. From that second one above, when you're at a place like I am with my wife and all her family's here, like that's great. That is so great. That is so great. That is so wonderful for her parents, but it's tough for my parents who were, like I mentioned, 9 and 10 hours away. It is tough. Jason, you said intentional, and I agree with that. I think it's intentional at work, intentional at home. For me, it's very organized. Um, Everything I do goes on my work calendar. I try to track everything that way. We have a calendar at home. We have one of those big ones that we get where you can really write on it. My kids are too young to really stay on top of their own, but we allow them to write on the calendar. So I'll put my stuff on the calendar. My wife will put her stuff. We'll tell them when they have their baseball games and they get to be organized as well. But that organization, that knowing weeks and months in advance what should be happening, is what lets you take those trips. Everyone likes the idea of, oh, I'll go home, I'll go visit my mom. My mom lives at the beach. We'll go see her. But then you kick the can down the road and you haven't booked the plane tickets because they're too expensive right now. But if you wait for next Tuesday, they're going to come down. And that kind of happens. So being intentional with your desire to take your kids and your family to your parents, but also being organized enough to do so. It's often, and again, I'm very guilty of it too. I complained it's a lot harder for us to pack up 2 kids, 2 dogs, and 2 adults and get in the car. Why don't you just come see us? Well, I mean that is that's a great plan as long as your parents are still able to do that. So if you're starting a family, young into the family, and your parents are still able to travel, book their tickets, get them here. One thing that I wish I would have done more is bringing my parents here so they could do the normal stuff. They could be there when the kids are getting ready for school. They could be here when the kids got home from school. They could talk about the day. They could take them to baseball practice. They could go to the Saturday baseball games, because if you're just relying on your trips to your parents, it's different. It's a vacation and my mom just happens to be there. Or, it's a trip to an LSU Georgia football game and my dad lives in Athens, so we'll meet up with him for dinner. Bringing your parents to you, if you're able and if they are able, is absolutely something I would push, advocate for, because they get to see you and then they get to see the grandkids in their element. And that's something that, both my parents have told me was really special for them, the times that they could do that. Not just the baptisms, not just the birthdays, but just the regular stuff. What you would think is the boring or stressful Tuesday, grandpa and grandma love. They love the ability to do that. So make the trip, book the flight. If you're thinking about it now, if no one's coming to visit you this Friday, get mom or dad to come visit you next Friday. Go ahead and put that on there and take them to the place that you wrote on your thumb. Whatever place that you need to get to, is definitely a push from me. What about with you, Jason?
Yeah, I think you hit upon some great things there, Brad. And the other thing that, again, it circles back to time. Everybody's busy, especially in this field, in this industry, but it's utilizing some of those. I look at me now as a parent, and it's connecting with some of my kids, their classmates or their friends' parents. And it's funny. It's like a lot of times it's obligatory, right? Like you're all there, you have to be somewhere, and you're just, Brad and I will laugh, like you're doing the typical dad to dad conversation, like, oh yeah, how's the game? Like, how you doing? Yeah. But it's been great in that I've been able to like forge some relationships with some of those individuals. So it's like the best of both worlds. Like I do this to Brad a lot. We just did it recently. Like Brad and I want to hang out. We want to hang out, right? So let's just get our families together and they can hang out too. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. Kids are all playing, parents have a chance to socialize and interact and get outside, the hustle and bustle. But that may have not been something that I was, on my radar as open to, but being a lot more intentional about that for sure. And then again, kind of like Brad was saying, with my family, it's been helpful, I think. I forget sometimes that our kids are like just more technologically comfortable and driven than we are. Like, we never taught our kids how to use an iPad or a phone, but they know, they're watching, they're soaking it up. So them like FaceTiming with their cousins, or like my parents, FaceTime with grandma and grandpa, it's something that they've kind of always done. And so it's nothing new for them. But I think about it, just the sense of how much it brings joy to my parents, and my family and my sisters. And it's been really cool, I think, for, my parents or my sisters to hear my kids say, oh, we want to talk to them, or I've been wanting to talk to you, or I've missed you, or things like that. Back in the day, I saw my grandparents maybe twice a year, whenever we would make the trip there for summer and for Christmas. So again, it's not the same as in person, but, being intentional in those things and doing little care packages. They like sending things to their nephews, like, hey, here's some seasoning, here's some cracklings, here's some things down here that you can get. So it kind of keeps the momentum going for the next meetup and things of that nature, which kind of, I think, would transition the whole connecting and utilizing your people and your tribe, could kind of segue into, something that Brad and Dr. Bodack have touched upon. And a lot of people on our staff are kind of in that realm, or have been recently, like the changing of the roles, from child to parent, and then, now maybe being in the position of taking care of a parent or a loved one. And that's complex, even if you're in the same place. But how kind of are you navigating that from a realm of distance? And so for me, I know I'm leaning really heavy on my sisters, but I feel guilty at times that it falls a lot on them being the in-person. But I've also learned that, man, befriending my parents' neighbors, befriending the people that they see on a regular, has been just really beneficial. Just kind of getting those updates. When I talk to my dad, he's not telling me, the negatives. He's not telling me if he's not feeling well or whatnot. So I'm kind of leaning on his neighbor, who's got eyes on him, or I'm leaning on my sisters who are seeing him. So that kind of, I think, segues into the next part of it, of our discussion of, how is it, caring from parents or family from a distance. So, Dr. B, circle back to you, if you're okay, in that regard.
Well, thanks, Jason. I think you and Brad had mentioned some really good things about, being intentional, having the calendar for planning. That's what my sister and I do with my dad. When I moved down here, he was in his early to mid 70s in relatively good health. I moved here, people are going to get old, they age, but what exactly does that look like? What does that mean? And how is that going to happen? Since I've been here, Dad has had 4 major surgeries, one of which he had complications from, which meant my sister and I had to go home and deal with him. And she's in Tennessee. I'm here. Dad is he's widowed. He's an only child. I have some of my mom's family, some of my cousins are around that we fortunately have been able to help on when we couldn't be there at the drop of a dime. But there is no playbook for dealing with this. A lot of it's been learning as we go. Fortunately, having a supervisor or boss that is super understanding and recognizes family first. If there's something, go, we'll figure it out. Just go be with Dad. That's been very helpful, and I've been very fortunate in both of my jobs to have that situation. But just in terms of dealing with an aging parent, maybe things to keep in mind is if something happens to them, do you know how they pay their bills? Are they paying some of them online? Do you know the username? Do you know the passwords? Do you know bank information? If are you on any banking accounts with that parent? We had Dad in the hospital. He was not able to speak for himself, and my sister's trying to pay a bill, and just asking the person like, okay, you're calling, you need this money. I want to send you a bill. Where do I send it to? She's not authorized on the account. It was 45 minutes of back and forth. Do you have paperwork in place? Things to think about: power of attorney, medical power of attorney, your parents' finances situation. And it's not something you ever want to think about or like to think about, but even in terms of how do you have that conversation with your parent? When my dad was in the hospital, he had signed some paperwork for a DNR, which is a do not resuscitate order. He was not in his right mind when he signed those paperwork. And now my sister's like, well, even though she's older, I have a lot more patience than she does. She's like, you need to have the conversation with dad to see if he understands what he signed and what that means. So I'm just like, how do you even start that conversation with your parent? Those are maybe some things to think about. And I know I've had, again, a lot of it is just relying on some of my friends that are in a similar situation, like, hey, this happened, how'd you handle this? Or I just need to talk to somebody, just whether it's just to listen and maybe just by the questions they're asking has been very helpful. In the fall I had to take a FMLA for 8 weeks to deal with my dad because of an illness. And I'd say the hardest part of all of this is just the stress. One of the things we've gone to is we put cameras in the house. And he knew the cameras were going in the house, and with the understanding we're not going to spy on you. But if you don't pick up your phone, are you okay? We just want to check on you. He has Life Alert. What resources does he have? I don't remember, it was Brad or Jason that talked about befriending the neighbors. Actually, we haven't befriended the neighbors. They've become our spies. So sometimes we'll get a phone call from them like, is everything okay with your dad? We noticed that the ambulance was there today. How do you utilize that network from afar, and just maybe even, professional implications, like, do I need to look at moving either my parent where I am? Is that even feasible or possible? Or is it maybe something that I need to look at, relocating myself or my sibling relocating? So just a lot of questions. No, I'm kind of going through this quickly. We have I think about less than 5 minutes left. But does anyone have any questions?
Well, and Dr. B, what I was going to say too is we've kind of blown through our buffer. But can you go to the next slide? I tried to sneak in something. Go one more. Let's see if I got it in. Yeah. So we wanted y'all to at least see that this is where everyone on this call today is from. So even if there's a time where you feel like you don't have your roots planted, or you don't really know, you've got people. And that's one of the best things about our field. And I think one of the best things about conferences like this is that you get to connect. I don't know if someone was from Alabama, but the person that said Roll Tide, I couldn't leave Alabama off again. So I painted it for you. But we want y'all, and then if you'll go one more slide, Dr. Bodack, if y'all have got some questions, please send them to us. We did a bad job about stopping ourselves from talking because we wanted to share so much, and we were so happy that y'all hopped on. But those are all of our contacts, emails, phone numbers. Please reach out. If any of y'all are coming to Baton Rouge tonight, I got a place we can go. We got some crawfish, we got Ivars, we got Duvix. But hang on to this as well. I wrote mine yesterday, kind of forgot about it, came in today, and I saw some things that I needed to see, which was really nice. And I think a lot of times I don't give myself enough credit, maybe you don't either, about knowing that you've been planting roots all this time, even if you've been there 1 year, 5 years, 20 years. It's hard to see the tree that's been growing when you're the tree. You don't get to step back and see it. So take some time for sure. We'll hang around as long as we can, but I know we've got our second keynote speaker at 12:30.
And so hopefully we did maybe answer some of the questions you had. But if not, feel free, definitely reach out.
Thank y'all for hopping on.
It looks like we did have a question in the chat.
Oh, that's a great question, Whitney. How do you keep those worries from interfering with your own academic and professional pursuits? For what how do you de-stress? In some cases, maybe it means what's your support network? Is it talking to your friends who are going through it? Is it actually seeking the help of a professional counselor to help you navigate those pursuits? I'll tell you, it's not easy. It's kept me up at times. It's been stressful, but I have found some ways to help minimize my anxieties and worries. And I think at the end of the day, that's maybe something that you can look at. What can you do to help minimize and worry? I'm an internal worrier. My sister's an external worrier, so my dad's like, she's an open book. You know what's going on with her. My dad's like, I have no idea what's going on with you. I internalize it, which isn't necessarily the best way. I also know that, at times, what does stress do? I'm eating, okay, candy. Ooh, candy. Let's eat this candy. Ooh, chips and dip. Okay, not the healthy stuff, but finding ways to what's going to help you cope and keep you sane. I've got 2 cats. They're amazing. So those are my stress release. I'm owned by them. I don't own them. They own me.
And Whitney too, Dr. Bodack really nailed a lot of that. I hope you jotted down some of the contact information. It's not easy. It's a tough transition. I've had to go through, I'm the son that my parents were taking care of, and now I'm the son that's kind of taking care of them. And it's a tough transition, but just know that without a doubt, I've never met either of your parents, but I promise you, they want you where you're at. They don't want you worrying about them, their pride, their love, their anything. They don't want you changing you and whatever, worrying about them. But it'll happen. And like Dr. Bodack said, there are ways to reach out. There are ways to get more connected. All the technology right now, just the face-to-face is so great. The Zooms, the FaceTimes, you name it. They might not follow your Instagram, or you might not post as much as you want, but I even got my mom a picture frame that we digitally upload all of our pictures to her picture frame. So she gets to see us, the stuff that doesn't get posted, she gets to see the kids. That's just a great way. And if your parents are still technologically savvy to send that back to you, that would be a great thing as well. But
yeah, definitely reach out, Whitney, and we could talk more.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
will.
I think you said, just the finisher, I think you just speaking up is awesome, because it took me a long time to feel comfortable talking about those things. And it's easy to just be on your island, and you kind of get into that false mindset of, oh, I'm just kind of in it. No one else would understand. No one else is going through what I'm going through. I don't want to bother people with my troubles, but talking about it, and the relationships that I already had, whether it be friends or coworkers, it just helped them grow exponentially when they're like, oh no, I understand. I'm kind of in it too, or I've experienced that. And it makes you feel like you're digging the ditch together instead of just on that island by yourself trying to figure it out. So yeah, big ups to you for even
Yes.
bringing it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
we'll see almost everybody, hopefully, over in the 12:30 keynote speaker. We'll quit clogging up your room, Sarah. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Sarah, bye.
Bye.